Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth. Today we have a very special guest, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Many of you have seen him on other interviews. Uh, Colonel Wilkerson, for those who don't know, was also former Chief of Staff for U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell. So this is going a little bit back. For the younger audience, it may have been before their time. For, for, for some of us, it was during our more formative years. Welcome, Colonel. Glad to have you on.
Hey there, entrepreneurs. Are you feeling the squeeze from increasing regulations and higher taxes? Maybe you've noticed the growing instability and thought there has to be a better way. Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to consider offshoring your wealth now. Imagine a life where your hard-earned money isn't constantly under threat from unpredictable government policies. Sounds pretty good, right? Let me tell you. It's not just a dream, it's a smart strategy. Here at Exit Strategy, we specialize in helping entrepreneurs like you protect and grow their wealth. We navigate the complex world of international finance so you don't have to, from setting up offshore accounts to advising on the best countries with favorable tax laws. We've got you covered. Now, I know what you're thinking. Offshoring sounds risky, maybe even a bit shady, but the truth is many savvy business owners are already doing it. It's not just about dodging taxes, it's about creating a safety net for your future. Imagine diversifying your assets across multiple jurisdictions. When one country faces economic downturns, your wealth remains secure. Think of it as an insurance policy against the uncertainties of life. And let's not forget, having a portion of your wealth offshore can open up opportunities for international investments. You're no longer limited by the economic climate of a single country. You can tap into booming markets around the world, maximizing your returns. But here's the kicker. Time is of the essence. With increasing global scrutiny and tightening regulations, the window for easy offshoring is closing fast. The sooner you act, the better positioned you'll be. So why wait? Protect your wealth, secure your future, and explore new opportunities with Exit Strategy. Don't let the rising dangers in the US economy catch you off guard. Reach out to us today and take the first step towards financial freedom. Because when it comes to your wealth, playing it safe is the riskiest move of all. Thanks for watching, and remember, your future starts with the decisions you make today. Choose wisely, choose Exit Strategy. Catch you in the next video.
Good to be with you. And I'll just comment that my last seminar at the College of William and Mary in 2021, one of my students looked at me during my introduction and said, "Who was Colin Powell?"
Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible.
Yeah. And she also said later in the seminar, I've never lived in an America that wasn't at war.
Yeah, well, if you count the Indian Wars and all these types of conflicts, I think it was 12 years of peace since
Yeah.
1776.
Yeah.
And
But
what?
but the last 25 or so have been in your face.
Oh, yes, yes. Not somewhere over there where the newspapers write an occasional
Yeah.
article about it. But what really shocked me, do you remember a couple of years ago, the Research Center, the Congressional Research Center, published a listing of all the military actions U.S. military has been involved in since 1778 or 1798, I think, is what they said, to 2022. And it was something like around 400 or 500 actions without declaration of war, obviously, by Congress. And more than half of them were since 1991.
Even more stunning than that, and it stunned me, and I'm somewhat of a historian. I was in Arlington National Cemetery recently, and I looked at their official codification on the wall in black granite of the wars, and I was blown away. They never stopped. they, they just filled wall after wall after wall.
Oh, that's horrible. But with the Congressional Research Center, they didn't count anything inside the U.S. So the Civil War didn't even count,
Right.
or any, the Whiskey Rebellion and all those little ones from Washington's time. But yeah, they didn't count the Civil War. They just counted outside the
Yeah.
official boundaries.
Try carrying the Army colors with all their pennants on them. Takes a Superman.
Three man carry. That's Well, I mean, honestly though, that's horrible if you think about it. I mean, what does America get out of these wars? I mean,
Not
America, I'm not talking the oligarchs.
not a lot, especially of late. I mean, you can make some cases for some of them. As Grant said, General Grant, then President Grant said, the Mexican War was probably the most egregious event that ever occurred. It was horrible. And he was down at the, fighting end of the bayonet, as it were.
Hmm.
Um, and many of them are that way. Clearly, the so-called Indian Wars from 1866 to 1890 were a mini genocide, if you will, against many native tribes. Um, some of them, many people like to say World War II, even our intervention later in World War One, which made us just scads of money, um, were justified. But the more I study both of those conflicts, which I really consider Chapter One and Chapter Two the same conflict, the more I understand how much Churchill and other leaders were responsible for those wars.
Hmm.
Churchill, both of them, particularly the second one, where really Germany was just going so much economically, population wise, and everything else that Britain knew its empire would be ended if he didn't take care of Germany. So, in many respects, we sort of, maybe not the United States, but we were backing Britain and we were backing other countries very solidly at the time. Even Germany, we were backing
Oh
Germany
yeah, yeah.
solidly at the time. We we helped breed them certainly, and Wilson at the Versailles Peace Conference certainly was very instrumental in breeding
Yeah.
World War II.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, have you ever heard of Anthony Sutton?
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Great
He
books.
he emails me. He emails me every now and then, tried to get inside me and tell me what I ought to say.
Yeah,
But
it's
his
all
emails are pretty smart.
well, the archival evidence on Wall Street's linking to both the Bolsheviks and the Nazis is something.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I served under the late General Griffin, God rest his soul. He went to Christ about half a year ago. When he was a colonel, and he started his career off as a Marine, as a
Hmm.
grunt,
Yeah, I think
in
I
the
remember that.
in the 60s. And
I
one
I
day,
was in I was head of the Marine Corps War College for a while, the only Army
oh,
officer I know ever to be, and we had a scroll
hmm,
on one of our walls. We had all the people that were of some note in the Marine Corps at some time.
hmm. Oh, that's pretty cool. Actually, that's well,
Smedley Butler had to be placed there. The guy who actually said he was a criminal for capitalism on two
hmm,
continents.
hmm.
We had to put him there. He was not there when we arrived.
Oh, really, really?
Yeah,
Well, considering he saved the U.S. from a fascist
yeah,
takeover
exactly.
when Ford and Prescott Bush asked him to overthrow the
Yeah.
government.
Every time I include Prescott Bush in that, people look at me and say, "No, you don't mean George H.W.'s daddy, do you?"
Damn right. Damn
Yes.
Skippy. Well, General Griffin, because he said the same thing when, like I say, he was a colonel at that point, and we were just, I was in one of his staff officers, and we were just eating lunch, and he sits down with us and he just starts talking to us. And for the first time, he just starts talking about his career when he was a grunt in the Marines. And he's like, and he starts talking about all the little bush wars they were sent to in Latin America because
Yeah.
U.S. corporations were abusing the local population. The population finally breaks, starts revolting. The local government's in the pocket of the corporation, asks the Marine Corps to come in there, and it's like, and we come in there and we just shoot the local people. We just put them down.
Yep.
But I understand why they're rebelling. It's the same thing that Smedley Butler said. Absolutely, it was just a racket.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we just made it a little more sophisticated in the 20th and 21st centuries.
Call them commies and shoot them
Yeah,
off.
we didn't do like we did in the Philippines, put them in a ditch and machine gun them.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I was just reading the other day some of the things about the Philippines concentration camps that I wasn't aware of.
And OTR sent a telegram, which I have a facsimile of, a telegram to the general who ordered that killing. It was almost like Baba Yar, congratulating him.
That's geez, that's yeah, yeah, it's horrible to read some of this stuff. It took the U.S. 2 weeks to get the Spanish out, and then 4 years to put down the Filipinos.
That was a Dewey's War. That was great. Damn the torpedoes. No, that was Farragut, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, the interesting thing about that was when I was reading, and I think my memory serves me right here, where the Assistant Secretary of the Navy dispatched a cable to the U.S. then Pacific Fleet in port somewhere around Hainan Island or somewhere in the South China Sea, and said, "With all speed, make for the Philippines." And that was the start of the war.
Yeah. Interesting little fact about the Philippines, because, everybody, oh, 1945, the war ended, the Japanese surrendered. Well, the last action against a Japanese unit at a battalion size unit in the Philippines was in 1946.
I
Little
remember
bug
reading about
the
that.
buggers didn't put their weapons
Yeah,
down. They didn't
I remember
care. I
reading
mean,
about that. They were somewhere around Corregidor or something, weren't
yeah,
they, when
yeah.
they found them?
Battalions, and this isn't, individuals. The individuals, they kept pulling them out of there till for the next
Yeah,
20 years. But I mean, a battalion-sized unit just, yeah, we're not going to surrender. We don't care.
yeah.
We're
Well,
Emperor's still alive, and
when I was at PACOM, when we called it Pacific Command, headquartered in Camp Smith in Honolulu, Hawaii, we encountered in some of our efforts to clean up the Pacific, if you will, with
hmm
regard to everything from prisoners of war to ordnance, we encountered a couple of Japanese who came out of the jungle.
Really,
Yeah, they were scraggly and old.
jeez, what
One
this
was
is?
one was on Tarawa, I think. One was somewhere near. Might have been one of the islands. Wasn't the main island of Okinawa, but it was somewhere in the other smaller islands that he just came out of a hole in the ground and said, "I surrender."
So he had no idea
30,
the
40
war
years
ended.
after the war.
Oh, talk about a wasted life.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah.
Jesus. Oh, yeah. Go to Japan. It's been rebuilt 100 times over.
I'm sure he would have
Wow.
had a heart attack if he'd gone back to the main islands.
Wow. Yeah. God, what a waste of a life. I mean, just sitting in the jungle. Who was he fighting? There was nobody around.
He said in the interviews that I think we put the team that we were using to find MIAs and missing in action and
hmm
KIs we didn't have from the Vietnam and the Korean conflicts.
hmm
We sent that team out there, and in the interviews, it was fascinating to read the transcripts of the interviews because he had been around one of the generals, and so he knew a little bit more than your basic private would know.
hmm
But he was stunned, really stunned, as you might imagine, to understand what had happened as we tried to explain to him,
30 years ago.
I missed so much.
Jeez.
Uh,
Oh, that's horrible. I mean, that's really a wasted life. I mean,
it is
that's so
proof,
horrible.
proof positive, the detritus of war.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Because you read about some of these guys, like there's a lot of the Germans on the Eastern Front, 1945, they wouldn't surrender because they had nothing to go back to.
Right,
They had been fighting for so long, they do suicide attacks on Soviet positions rather than surrender just because they didn't want to. They didn't know how to put weapons down anymore.
right.
So
That
yeah.
was that was probably one of the most brutal fronts in any war ever. I mean, I know I'm encompassing Genghis Khan and all the rest, but that must have just been brutal, especially in winter.
Oh yeah.
Just a brutal front.
Yeah, there was a famous picture near Stalingrad. Sorry for translating from Russian, been speaking Russian all day. Under
Hmm,
Bod would mean south of a point, but yeah, it's the Italian horse cavalry. Just a
yeah,
field of dead horses and dead cavalrymen. They got machine gunned down by tanks passing by,
yeah.
and they're all frozen. I mean, just as far as the eye can see, they took out a division of Italian horse cavalry, laid them all out.
There's a book. I can't remember the author now. I'm ashamed of myself, but it's actually, I think, better than Eric Maria Remarque's All Quiet on the Western Front, and it's about the Eastern struggle from roughly
hmm
the aftermath of Kursk all the way to Berlin. and it's a brutal book. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just so realistic, but it's not realistic the way some of these Afghanistan and Iraq books are today, just throwing it in your face with, all the crap colored up on it. It's really a well-written book, like Remarque's book is.
Hmm.
There's some deep philosophy embedded in it, and it leads you to believe just at the end just how absolutely stupid war is.
Yeah, there's The Forgotten Soldier, which is a good book from a German perspective, French
Yeah.
German guy. But if have you read Enemy at the Gates?
Yes.
I mean, the movie was just the movie was it was a ripoff of a fiction book called The War of the Rats, and they just
Yeah.
stole the name. But what was interesting. Enemy of the Gates was written by an American who got permission from the Soviet Union to travel all over the Soviet Union, interview anyone who fought there, and it's just all first person perspectives from all sides. And you even
Right.
sort of feel sorry for the Germans at the end because I mean they were screwed. I mean it was at that point. Uh, and there was one incident they were saying the Germans were down on rounds, so the from the Soviet side they knew they weren't going to get fired on unless there was a T-34 coming in point blank,
Right.
and the wind was blowing just right, and they came out there, psyops. They came out there, butchered a cow right on the spot, put it on a spit, and you started cooking it, and the wind's blowing in that direction. Surrender, and you can eat as much as you want. And then Germans know if they get up and go surrender, their own officers will shoot them in the back. They just
Yeah.
sit there and watch this cow getting, and they're starving.
Excruciating.
They're eating chunks of butter, 100 grams a
Yeah.
day. So yeah, strong
Yeah.
psyops.
Sort of like Gaza now.
Oh God, yeah, that's horrible. That's just it. I you know I know people. I mean, I guess it comes partially from that rapture crowd, but that if it's the Israelis doing it, so it has to be holy. And,
Well, the people I'm associated with, I hate to admit, have been associated with, who are a part of that crowd, like John Hagee's group, Christians United for
mhm.
Israel, who send some 100 or 200 million dollars every year to West Bank settlers, by the way.
Wow,
Um,
really?
they are they are utterly insane, or like Hagee himself, who has a huge palace just northeast of Dallas, airplanes, boats, everything else. And their philosophy, of course, is if you are really, really filthy wealthy, it means Jesus Christ favors you. That's the
Yeah.
new philosophy of these people.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Joel Osteen, John Hagee. But Hagee was asked point blank one day, you wrote in your book that when Christ descends with a flaming sword, he'll kill all the unbelievers, and it will happen somewhere in the old land. What are the Jews going to do that you're united with? And for a moment, he
Yeah.
looks like he's caught, and then he said, he's very quick. And then he says, they'll convert.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as an Orthodox Christian, when you see there was a Palestinian village, the Christian village that was burnt down,
Mm,
churches getting hit, and it's and 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 now they're saying, oh, it's the fault of Russia, or yeah, because they're pulling that now, or it's the fault of propaganda that the Israeli government is being portrayed as the enemy of Christians. I'm like, no, guys, you're butchering Christians. That's
yeah.
what you know.
When I was working for Powell as Secretary of State and I was his chief of staff, one day I had the head of the Greek Orthodox Church headquartered in that region come into my office, and I said, how can I help you? And he sat down and we talked for a few minutes, just general conversation. And then he said, I have a problem. I said, okay, I figured you were here for some reason. He said, I don't have any problem with the Muslims in my area. I don't have any problem with the other Christian sects in my area. I don't have any problem with anybody except the Israelis. I have a problem with the Israelis. I said, what are your problems? He said, oh, everything from their confiscating my land to shooting my people.
Yeah.
I, I said, let's talk, and then we'll go
Oh,
see the secretary.
Yeah, yeah. It's the Russian church, the Russian Orthodox Church, back in the 1880s, 1870s, it was actually the biggest landowner in Palestine, the whole region, and it set up a lot of churches. The region's actually part of the Jerusalem Church, Orthodox Church. But the
Hmm.
Russian church was there with permission, of course, because it's different canonical territory. But they were doing the Jerusalem church is pretty poor, and the Russian church under the czars came in and was funding orphanages, schools, churches, and so on, pouring money into the area. So there was a lot. There was a pretty strong tie that was there well before the revolution. Yeah, that unfortunate incident.
Yeah. Well, this gentleman told me that one of his, he said, here's their motivation, really. They want my land.
Yeah, yeah,
They want my land. He said they want every acre that we have there. And they will uproot the church if they have to. They want every acre.
yeah.
And if you got any water,
Oh, jeez.
beware. They'll come
Yeah.
get you at night.
That's like a video I saw some Arab guys walk in the desert and he kicks the sand and oil starts coming up and all of a sudden I think it was George Bush Jr. His image fire in the sky like put some sand back on there, image disappears, kicks it back, oil comes up, image appears like damn it, buries it and walks away.
I can imagine they love George W. Bush in that region.
Well,
We will bring democracy to all those heathens.
yeah, well, you know. When I enlisted, because I was in the Guard, enlisted while I was in university before I became an officer. I remember my common task manual, and in the first page there was a paragraph that strictly put out the U.S. is not a democracy; it is a representative republic. And then later on in the 2000s, I got my hands on a new common task manual. I'm looking at it. Nah, it's gone. They took
Mm.
that page out. So describing what the U.S. government's supposed to be. So like,
I used
and
to I used to ask that question about midway in my national security decision making seminar at both universities, George Washington and William and Mary. And I got an answer one day that was pretty decent. This girl, about 20-year-old undergraduate, she said to me, we are a federal republic of sorts with democratic tendencies, like voting, which is probably the least important aspect of democracy. I said, why don't you get up and teach the class for a while?
that's a pretty good. Yeah. Well, like Mark Twain said 140 years ago, if voting solved anything, they'd just ban it,
Yeah.
or
it
if voting
it makes
mattered.
people feel, yeah, it makes people feel like they have some input.
Yeah. Well, last time I voted in the U.S. election, I was in before we moved back. Um, Before I gave up on that practice in general because it was just you get that pointless feeling. And I'm standing in line early voting, so I went. It was in Houston. I was living in Houston, working for Cameron, and I'm standing in line, and just out of curiosity, I start talking to people around me. What about this issue? What about that? Nobody knows anything. Like, why are you voting if you have no? Because it's your duty. That's what they're told. But
The
you have
duty.
no
Yeah.
idea about anything. Just go put a little check mark and walk out.
I could be really, really pessimistic and say I spent 5 years in Texas going to junior high and high school, and that's Texas. They don't know squat. They camp on the Guadalupe River when the rains are coming down. And tragically, lots
Yeah.
of people get washed away. And by
Well,
the way, that's about the fourth or fifth time that's happened.
oof.
They don't learn.
Well, what can I say? Russians love ice fishing. Unfortunately, they keep running out to ice fish on rivers right when it's already melting. So every year you get videos of cars falling through the ice, and every year you get a couple incidents where the emergency services have to fly a helicopter and pick up the fishermen off the
Right.
big chunk of ice that's going out to sea.
Yeah.
I guess everybody has these types of people.
Well, the bad thing. I have a lot of friends in what I would call especially in the Pacific Northwest, the emergency services or,
Hmm.
rescue squads, things like that. And they will tell you, my life is endangered every week by fools. Why should I have to go out to the Grand Canyon and pluck someone off the side of the wall 2,000 feet from the ground because they stepped over to take a picture and slipped? It says right there, too, do not go beyond this point.
I used to work in Moscow City, and the highest building in Moscow City, it's all office buildings and some apartment office buildings, is 54 stories. And there's a restaurant on top of that. And they've now had to put sky netting up, including metal netting and sky netting,
Right.
because some guy decided to take a nice photo, leaned over, and he demolished a very expensive car underneath him 54
Oh,
stories later. So,
bet he didn't make it.
yeah, a surprise for the car owner, too.
Hmm.
Didn't see that one
Didn't do
coming.
it. Hope it wasn't a Tesla.
Yeah, that would be an explosion. Well, let me ask you this, sir. I mean, obviously, I came in the U.S. military. It was already early '90s, so post Cold War. You were there at the height of the Cold War. The communications, the communication between Soviet Union's leadership and the U.S. leadership under Reagan, and then I guess under Bush Senior, compared to today. I mean, to me, it just seems like there used to be adults, and now I don't know what to call these people. Uh,
My memory as a youngster, I was born in 45. My memory as a youngster after the Soviet explosion of a nuclear weapon is that we had some moderate difficulties in the beginning. Um, and then really beginning, I think I would say beginning with Nikita Khrushchev, we had a sort of a unfreezing of relations that was testy at times, but it began to build into um, everything from a hotline to real conversations, meaningful conversations between leaderships and between militaries in particular, all the way up to the time that Akrameyev, for example, comes into my former boss, Admiral Bill Crow, who then had become the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for Ronald Reagan, hands him a map. And the map, I got a copy of it. I got a copy of it somewhere around here in this mess. The map shows how the United States has the USSR totally encircled.
oh yeah, yeah.
And Akrameyev puts his finger on it and shoves it at the crowd and says, just a present for you to let you know how we feel. And Crow, after that, he said to all of us, he had a different appreciation of the whole business because he said he never thought about it that way. And you say, well, this guy was, he's a Princeton graduate, had been
Hmm.
PACOM commander, smart guy. But I think he was telling the truth. He'd never really thought about it from what? The other guy's perspective. And I think if I remember right, Akrameyev committed suicide after the wall came down and
Yeah.
the rapprochement, which I thought I remember when I heard about that, I felt really really terrible because here's a guy who devoted his whole life to his country and thought he was doing the right thing. I mean, I don't know anything about him personally, but I just sensed he was a pretty upright guy, just like Bill Crow. And it helped that they both were sort of similar services. And here they were meeting, and maybe for the first time, the one understood the other, and maybe a little bit on the other side. But your question is a good one. And I think the relationship was a lot closer in terms of security in particular,
Hmm.
because neither side wanted an exchange of nuclear weapons. And both sides knew how dangerous the weapons were, how costly they were. And we tried again and again, both sides, to do something about it. Powell was most elated, and his elation lasted all the way to when he first hired me in 1989 over the INF treaty. He said, this is the treaty that got rid of the most dangerous class of weapons, and it is a monumental achievement for both Moscow and Washington and for the rest of the world. And now look what we've done.
Oh yeah, they're back
Yeah,
from both sides.
yeah.
Do you think if it
And
was?
I have to
Mhm.
say that, as I say on our own television all the time, we're the ones who canceled out all the treaties.
Yeah.
We started it with the ABM treaty and just kept on going, rolled them all up.
Why do you think they did that? Um,
I think my whole appreciation of this is that we are trying to battle China through Russia. And our great fear, our billionaires' fear, the people who stand behind Trump in the shadows, is that China is the new hegemon. When I don't see any sign from the Central Party school, from Xi Jinping, from Hu Jintao, from Wang Yi, from anybody I've ever dealt with in China, of China's having that aspiration. I see China as having an aspiration of making an ASEAN-like community that they dominate, probably economically.
oh,
I think
yeah.
Xi Jinping's right when he says, I don't want the world's reserve currency. That'd be the stupidest thing I could do. You know what reserve currencies do? Check out the Dutch guilder.
Oh
Check
yeah,
out the British pound sterling.
the
Uh,
Spanish peso.
yeah, they ruin the country that has them.
Yeah,
ultimately,
yeah.
ultimately. So I don't want to do that. But there's a bunch of people in this country that think that the whole future revolves around whether or not they defeat China, and Russia's in the way.
Well, which is an interesting issue because Russia and the Soviet Union, starting with Stalin, three times asked to join NATO,
Yeah.
and it got denied every one. You
Well,
think that would be the ultimate way to pull Russia away from China, but not not
Powell
the
walked
actions they've
into
taken.
Powell walked into my office when he had only hired me about 6 months before. We were at Forces Command in Atlanta, Georgia. He only spent 5.5 months there before he was chairman. But he walked in my office and he said, I think Rich is going to be Secretary of the Army, Rich Armitage,
Hmm.
and I think I might be Chief of Staff of the Army. Are you happy with that? I said, of course, boss. We're moving
Yeah.
along. We're moving along. Well, Rich got caught, Rich Armitage, later Deputy Secretary of
Mhm.
State, after he was sort of rewashed, got in real trouble. On DOD stationery as Assistant Secretary of Defense or National Security Affairs, I believe, if I remember right. On DOD stationery, he wrote a letter to a judge in Alexandria, Virginia, who was trying a friend of Rich's from Vietnam. And he wrote it on DOD stationery, weighing in on behalf of this accused woman.
Mhm.
And woo-hoo-hoo, the Washington Post got it and went after him, and he was persona non grata. He couldn't be dog catcher in the
Oh,
federal
jeez.
structure. And so Powell knew he had to resurrect him after that happened. And their plans were all put astray, if you will. And then all of a sudden, he gets a phone call from the president that says, I want you to be my chairman. So he's looking around at all the jealous generals because he was only 52 and he was probably the junior one. He wasn't a West Point graduate and he was black.
Yeah.
So he's looking around like, whoa, man,
The
this is
daggers are
a
out.
lot different from what I thought. But he was quick to pick, and everyone started calling him immediately. Bob Gates, um, Brent Scowcroft, Dick Cheney, because they wanted him to shut up. Bob Gates was very strident about it. He wanted him to shut his mouth. I happened to monitor that phone call. And Powell just told him, look, I was there. I was in St. Catherine's Palace. I was there on Long Island. I saw what was happening. The Cold War's over, you fools. And they wouldn't believe it. Bob Gates said, oh, the bear will be back. I guarantee the bear will be back. I'm in the CIA. The bear will be back. I'll tell you. And Powell started using the phrase in his speeches, what does the preacher do when the devil dies? And that was sort of what that's sort of what Gorbachev said to him in St. Catherine's Palace. He said to him, I know what you are under that mufti. You're a general. I know you're. What does it feel like to have lost your enemy? But so Powell's going around saying all this in his speeches. So everyone's accusing him. Even the op-ed in the New York Times accused him of usurping civil responsibility,
Oh, jeez.
trying to make policy as a general. And he told me, he said, I am making policy, by God. If they can't wake up to the fact that it's over, I'm going to help them wake up.
Well, compared to what
And it's
some generals say now.
well, his motivation was partially this. He said, after World War II, we almost disintegrated. Harry Truman said we didn't demobilize, we disintegrated. We went from 12 million
Hmm.
to about two and a half overnight.
Right.
And he said, we don't want to do that. So he came up with the concept of a base force, and he got
Hmm.
Bush to buy it, H.W. Bush. This is the force we dare not go below. And then Clinton came in with his Secretary of Defense, and we cut, that was 25% cut. And when Clinton came in, his Secretary of Defense, Les Aspin, wanted 3% more. So we eventually cut 28%. A big mistake we made. We cut the defense industrial base too.
Hmm.
And we had people from that base whom we trusted come in and tell us, you know what you're going to do? You're going to create a monopoly. You're going to create one prime, a whole bunch of subs. They're going to charge you a fortune for shitty products.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
A 152 millimeter round in Russia costs about $500. A 155 millimeter round in the U.S. I think is like a 4,000 now.
I was going to say 5,000.
Maybe it's
It's
five
a
thousand. That was a year ago. So
it's
inflation.
insane. And we do things like the F-35 has proprietary maintenance. That means no airman can work on that aircraft in that
Really?
area. No, a Lockheed Tech who costs $300 an hour minimum has to do that maintenance, and he will
Wow.
take lots of breaks.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible that we signed
Uh,
ourselves into that kind of stupidity.
I didn't know that. Wow. That's incredible.
You can tell that to your mentors there in Moscow. They'll get a little bit of, I'm sure they know it.
Oh yeah. I'm sure people well, yeah, people listen to the show. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Lockheed,
So,
Lockheed should be
wow.
taken, they should be taken to the horse shed and whipped.
That's incredible.
And
I mean, from
they don't even make really good equipment.
but from their point of view, that's a pretty good profit margin.
Oh, it's a hell of a return on investment. Yeah.
Well, sir, we are almost out of time. Like I said,
No,
unfortunately
I'm
I'm
having
using
so
the.
much fun.
I'd love to have you back and pick your brain some more. I'm sure the audience would love it too. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you. If you have any questions for Colonel Wilkerson, leave them in the comments. I will send them to him. Thank you for joining, sir. Thank you for joining me on the podcast, and I do hope to have you back on.
I'd love to. And let me ask your audience a question. Why do you think it is that we had better relations during the Cold War than we do now?
Adults, adults in the room.
Yeah, that's part of it. And part of it now is we're scared. We're really scared in America. We think we're going down. And the more you